And so when we were developing their compensation philosophy, we had to think about, okay, if our number one value is family, which on that farm it is, how are we going to build this system so that we are honoring that for everyone and so that we are creating opportunities for all family to kind of come back into the business and contribute. So
Welcome to At the Fence Line with your hosts, Sarah Chambers and Gavin Benker. Hello, listeners. Welcome to At the Fence Line with Sarah and Gavin. Sarah, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good today. I have upgraded my water situation. So I'm now drinking caffeinated water. And so for anybody that has listened to earlier episodes where we spent, a small chunk of time talking about how many shots of espresso I was at the time of recording, now it's just in my water. So it really never stops. Just staying sufficiently caffeinated in any way that I can. But so that's what I'm drinking today. Apparently there's antioxidants in this water as well. I don't know. I shouldn't maybe show the name. Maybe they'll sponsor us.
What do you have against oxidants?
I am not antioxidant. Anyways, yeah. So that's how I'm doing. It's still cold here. It
It's
is,
very
I don't know.
cold for March
Mm,
16th. Wow.
mhm. It's super cold. Apparently the sun is on its way, but
It's coming.
I'll believe it when I see it. I think I noted for a while that it seemed like throughout my life, it seemed pretty consistent that we had a snow day in May every second year. Like that was just the way it always went. And I don't think we had that last year. I don't even know that we had it the year before. So it feels like we're maybe due for that now.
Yeah, maybe not in May, but there was that big ice and heavy snow April storm a couple years ago. People were without power and
Right.
knocked down lots of power lines. Yeah. I'm not antioxidant, but I have to say right now I'm taking a firm position of being anti-accident
Mm,
because, as you know, Sarah, I slipped on some ice myself
mhm.
and hurt my leg. So, yeah, I was tied up with that a little bit this morning, but nice to be here and back. And they really didn't say much today other than try to stay off it and let it heal. So, I
It's
am on the
y-
way. Yeah.
your, if you don't mind me kind of poking fun, your like level of consistent, the not level, the amount of consistent injuries that you have had in the years that I know you, I feel like you get like one a year. You're an
Hmm.
active guy. You're
Yeah.
not like you do sports. I don't, maybe you need to pull back. You need a little bit more like cushioning around your bones to keep you safe. You like literally every year, I think you've had something happen.
Well, it's actually uncanny. So the one last year was almost a year ago to the day, and it was very similar. It was just the other
Mhm.
leg. So yeah, that's a good question. I think if you just curl up on the couch, all right, you won't get injured, but you might have a little bit less of a healthy long term lifespan. So I'm going to keep going.
Sure. Yeah, that was probably best in terms of, yeah, long-term planning.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not like you were doing sports though. Like
No,
I
I
also
wasn't.
walked to the car.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm really sorry that that happened. I know that as a really active person, that gets frustrating for you. I can't
Well,
imagine.
hey, yeah, such is life.
How's Dodge handling it? How's the old puppers? Like, is he
Dog.
getting walked still or?
No, he's not getting walks right now. He's just getting let out in the backyard. And he seems to know. It's uncanny. He's being kind of like careful around me. I think he
Yeah,
can sense that I'm limping, and so
sure.
he's such a good guy. Yeah.
Maybe he's just scared that you're gonna fall again. He's
Yeah,
like, "Ah,
maybe.
gotta watch out for this guy. You never know when he's gonna come crashing down."
Yeah, he might have seen it because it was just outside my front door that night. So he might have watched
Okay.
watched me bite it. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is uncanny how perceptive dogs are.
Yeah.
Yeah, they know. They know when something's up. Okay, well, um, sorry for
Time to
you.
get
The good
started?
news
Yeah.
is yeah, because I mean, the good news is even with a bum leg, you can still record a podcast.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a few things in my life that have changed, but work doesn't change much for me with a bum leg. No, I can,
Mhm.
I can still help farmers. I can still talk to you and all that good stuff. Yeah.
Good, good. Okay.
Okay.
Well,
So today,
let's get into it. Yeah.
yeah. Today, well, welcome again. And thank you for joining. We're going to do a two-part series on compensation, which fits into a broader framework of our back swaths, three key alignments philosophy. So, our three key alignments for new listeners or listeners that maybe have forgot this really, really important framework, our three key alignments are management, vision, and finance. So if you can imagine that, just imagine those three, we call them bubbles, three images on a screen, three parts, and each part has an arrow going back and forth. So each part influences each other part. So vision influences the way you set up your management. Vision also will take influences from finance, but also influence financial decisions. And then finance and management are connected as well. So, where you are currently with your financial performance, things like liquidity, debt servicing capacity, profit margin, efficiency margins, and that will influence how you make management and operational decisions as well. And so, compensation fits in that in all three areas, right? Compensation hits the income statement, then therefore hits the balance sheet, but it's also very much tied to your vision and where you're trying to take your farm, like what you're trying to achieve, where you're trying to get to in the next 5, 10 years. So, Sarah,
Yeah.
how would you take that and then help a farm start to develop a compensation philosophy? Like we're talking big picture here, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think that it's important, that when I think about tackling compensation for a farm, I really think about it in two pieces. So, like you said, we're going to kind of do a two-part series on this. And today is really going to be the philosophy piece of it, the rules, the ideas that are going to govern compensation for our business. So that's the part that we're going to dive into a little bit today. Um when it comes to touching on all of the bubbles and the three key alignments, I always like to start with the strategy piece, the vision piece. And this is something that I find a lot of farms try to skip this step. They think that it's maybe not necessary to do mission, vision, values, goals, things like that. They think it's sort of like inherent in their business. We know who we are, we know how we operate. But for me, it's really the building blocks of all different types of work and all different, sort of areas in the business. I always say, like, if you don't know where you're going, how are you going to chart the path to get there? And so that's really what that sort of strategic exercise is, that I like to do before we kind of dive into the compensation piece. So vision, is our people refer to it as a BHAG or big, hairy, audacious goal. I like to refer to it as a North Star. That's really the end state for our business that we're trying to get to. Um, the vision is what we do for who and why. And then we get into the values or guiding principles that are, sort of the pieces of us, the pieces of our business that we want to make decisions by, that we want to always be keeping in mind as we change, grow, whatever it might be, evolve in the business. These are like the things that stay true to us. So those are the sort of strategic planning pieces. And they really help when it comes to compensation. They help us decide what type of compensation that we need to build. Vision especially. What's like, are we in growth mode? Are we trying to set our farm up to grow and expand and be able to support generations and generations to come? Are we in preserve and protect mode? Obviously, those are going to be two very different compensation systems for two very different farm visions. So it really does matter. And then when we look at our values, especially, A lot of farms will have values like family. There might be some like community support things in there. Some will say education is really important to them. So those are all values that you would set at the business level, and all of those things can tie into compensation as well. We're not just going to set those values, print them off, and have them on the wall. Now we're gonna live them. We're gonna like work it into how we recognize contributions on the farm. So that is really the strategic kind of piece that I like to start with to really, you know, set the framework, keep us grounded in who we are, who we want to be, and again, use them as guiding principles for it. Like if we get stuck, this is something we're going to pull out and we're going to use them to help us make decisions in our business.
Yeah,
What
that's
is
fantastic. Before we keep going, I just want
Yeah.
to comment that I really like when you use the term North Star for
Mm,
a vision or an end state. I just personally, I like looking at the stars. I like
yeah.
astronomical things. So North Star resonates with me for sure. Can you maybe give an example of maybe if you've worked with a farm where
Mm,
their current situation, their current alignment maybe is a little bit different than what you hear or what they might have written down as far as where they're trying to go and their vision? Like maybe where a bit of a correction or a bit of an adjustment was needed?
mhm. Yeah, I mean, I I'm fortunate to work with many farms on their compensation systems. I I don't know. Well, okay, correction, or maybe it's just that we pulled the values out and we couldn't make a decision, we couldn't move forward, so we pulled them out.
Uh,
There is a farm that has returning next gens. And it seems like there's more and more of them that are kind of coming back every single time we meet. Um, It it compensation is really difficult. It's not, especially in a family business, like any, not just farms, any family business is gonna struggle with compensating themselves, and I think it's really changing and evolving. The way that generations prior used to do it is almost this mindset of sacrifice, and we take when it's good, um and we sacrifice other times. And so what I really try to work with the farms that I'm helping along, is to say, like, you need to pay yourself fair, throughout. This is what every other industry does. They're not, and that can be really challenging. It brings up a lot of conversations around transition mindset, forward thinking, and again, back to the values. If we're talking about family, okay, well, I always sacrificed. Do I want the future generations of my family to do the same? Or do we
mm,
want to like pay a fair wage, and maybe the dividends are going to be a little bit less at the end of the year, or, whatever it might be. So I think that pulling out values happens often if you remember that you have them. And they can really guide you, which is what
mhm.
they're supposed to do.
You're right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So,
So where do you start? Where do you
yeah,
start?
no, thank you. Yeah. So, I mean, again, once we've decided on mission, vision, values, we really have that end state, the desired end state in mind, then we can start charting the course to get there. What does the path look like to get to that end state? Being able to keep that in mind. So, on the philosophy piece of compensation, there's generally a few steps that go into it. And the first one is really just getting together, as a group, as a couple, whatever it might be, whatever your farm looks like, and really asking yourself some questions to decide, how do we feel about compensation? Because it seems straightforward, but it really isn't. Like, what does fairness mean? Huh? What does fairness mean to me? It's like
Well,
it's that it these
doesn't
Yeah, go
fairness
ahead.
just mean equal? No?
No. No, fair does not mean equal, and equal does not mean fair. Um And that's something that I think can be really hard for people to think about, especially if maybe you have multiple families in your farm. Maybe you and your brother always took the same, level of pay, and now I'm trying to convince you to look at things a little bit differently. It can be challenging. So decide how you feel about compensation, decide what you want to reward. Okay, so what are the behaviors that we want to reward? What are the behaviors that we want to encourage? Um, and those will be different things. Again, you pull at your values. So if education is really important to you on your farm, then will you reward education in terms of someone comes, you're going to pay them higher because they're more highly educated? Or is that going to be a benefit to working for your business that you're willing to support education? Um, how important is experience? Maybe you're a farm with a bigger team and you can handle bringing on some less experienced people with a higher level of education because you have the capability to train them. But how will compensation tie into all of those things? So, those are some of the questions you can ask. And then it's like, how in the market, how competitive do we want to be? That looks really different. I find like geographic location is really
Okay.
tied to that one in terms of competitiveness. Like what someone, in terms of what someone, how competitive they want to be in Western Manitoba is maybe going to look a little bit different than farms that are sitting just outside of Edmonton because of the
How does that?
other industries they're competing with.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, these are all questions that you need to be asking yourself. There's a ton more. I mean, you think about transparency once you've developed the system. How does that lead towards your values? How to, on and on and on. So there's lots of questions that you need to just really like think about. How do we feel about compensation? Decide that. It'll spur some excellent discussions as a group about where your sort of similarities are in your mindset about compensation and where some differences are. People will likely have to make compromises, especially if there's multiple generations, multiple families involved. Our ideas might be different. So the first place really is to start with that, though. The other big thing that I see come up quite often that people want to avoid, but they should not, is how are we treating non-farming family members?
Non-farming, but family. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So maybe
So if they're
s-
non-farming, why are we compensating them?
oh
I'm just
well.
to
Yeah.
prompt a
No, I love
conversation
it.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no. So I mean, why are we? What often happens is it might not necessarily be that they're taking home a wage, or like they're getting consistent payment every month. It's more like their university's paid for. Maybe the
Right.
farm is helping them put a down payment on their house. Maybe, whatever it might be. Um, why?
Shares
Why
that
is
shares in
that?
the farm, and the farm continues to grow and be worth more, and that's
Yes.
compensation. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So, it's not that I'm saying you shouldn't do those things, but I think that compensating people for their contributions is different than those pieces. And I mean, what I've seen time and time again is senior generations are taking home like minimum wages on the farm. And but then they want the farm to pay for someone's university degree. Well, maybe what you might consider doing is paying that senior generation, compensating them for the contribution that they're making. And if they want to gift from there, they can. But really being clear about why we're doing things, because your farm, it's only getting more complex. It's only, things are not getting simpler out there by any means. And as time goes on, things get muddier and muddier. So have a reason today for why we are doing the things that we're doing. Um, and just make sure it's clear. Make sure, sorry, you were going to say something.
No, I like that example because that helps with that separation, right? So you pay yourself, and then when it's separate from the farm, your personal decisions can be made on the side. And that's just one example, right? There's different ways of doing it, and yeah, pull out the values and the guiding principles, and that will help you along the way.
Mhm. And like I really like what you said about the shares, because the other thing that that I see commonly happen when there's non-farming family members with shares, like you said, the shares increase in value over time. Then we have to go back and talk about sweat equity for the people that
Mm.
were working on the farm through those years, and like, how were they being compensated during that time? It gets really muddy and really complicated if you don't address these things.
Yeah, it's better to address them early than later. And do you have a method? Do you have a method to help a family working through, say, a sweat equity discussion or disagreement?
I hesitate to, like, prescribe, something in
Right.
that regard
Yeah.
because I think it's so like, everybody's situation is different, and even though there's common themes that run through, um, I think I would I'm gonna put the question back to you, but before I do, I think I would underscore what you said earlier, that fair is not equal and equal is not always fair. What would you say to a farm struggling with sweat equity?
Well, first of all, if they're in that situation, if they've got to that point, then I think, and tell me what you think too, but I think that that's actually a good sign, even though the discussion might be tricky and could have some complexity to it. I think that means that there's a desire to look at that fair versus equal, right? So
Mm,
I it could be loaded with some emotion and some relationship dynamics, but I would encourage the people that are involved to try to take a look at it from well, this is something we have to work through, but we should get there should be some positives that come out of it on the other side. Should be, and I don't want to say that, like as a broad paintbrush for everybody. It could be a tricky discussion, and maybe not everybody is happy at the end. That could be an outcome. But we're at the table. I often suggest to take a look back at X year in the past and try to come up with some sort of valuation for the farm at that point, and then try to. It's you're never going to get it down to the dollar, right? It's going to be a bit of a feeling, like you said earlier. How do we feel about compensating certain roles and responsibilities on a farm? And then, but then, yeah, you kind of do your best to, it's like a freeze. You try to go back and assign a value for the farm. And then what did that person's contribution, where would the farm be without that person's contributions, is a way to start to get at their, the value that they've created for being on the farm. And it's often a team effort. So it's not easy to do, but those are some of the steps that you can take. But it does take some assumptions and some assignment of value to different responsibilities, and you kind of start from there and go from there.
hmm. I really like what you said about recognizing that, um, just being in that position where you're having that conversation is
Mm.
already kind of a win. That recognition piece, I think a lot, um, depending on how your farm handles communication, just recognizing that somebody else has made an impact on the success of your farm. I think that's another one of those things that maybe we don't say enough, to our family especially. Um, I really like that you pointed that out.
Another positive, right, is if you're having that discussion now, you can take steps to prevent having to have that, uh, retro look at valuing and trying to work it all out later. If you're having the discussion now, take advantage of the fact that you're having that discussion and put the systems in place so that the next generation or the next wave of people that are coming into the farm and contributing to the farm um, are then it's tracked, the contributions are tracked, the compensation philosophy and system are all put in place so that in the future maybe we don't have to have that conversation, and
Mhm.
things are spelled out and documented. So that's another opportunity.
And that is a great segue, thank you for the next
Unintended, by the
piece.
way.
The next piece of figuring out a compensation philosophy, which I think is maybe a little bit more of the practical piece now. And so we've talked about our ideas as a group around compensation. We've aligned everybody's ideas, and now we're ready to move forward with deciding on what elements we actually want to include in our compensation plan. I like to start by dividing things into two categories, so taxable and non-taxable benefits, and that's really about being able to properly explain and show our family, our employees, our team, what the actual take home is of
Mm.
what they're being. Like I'm going to say, someone we should have been keeping track of how many times I'm going to say compensation in this episode. Anyways, I don't like saying paid. You're being paid for. That seems compensated. Anyways,
Complicated.
okay. Okay. So, once you've decided on the benefits that you want to include and you've made sure that they align with your values, and then you need to decide on who is going to get those benefits. Is it across the board? Does everybody get a truck?
It's
Does everybody
remember it's equal. You just do the same for everybody, and
exactly.
that's easy.
So, so this is like we're deciding what we want to include based off of our values, and then we're deciding who's going to get what. I like to apply logic where we can. So, why is the farm paying for everyone's cell phone? Well, it's probably not going to, but who is going to be using their cell phone for work purposes? Maybe your shop manager, your mechanic, he's like, speaking with equipment dealer, whoever it might be, like, yeah, it makes sense, to pay for his cell phone as a benefit. Um, if your farm's in a position to have a health benefits program for your team, I think that makes sense across the board. Especially if your values are family, that's a really easy way to support the families of your team, is by having a health benefits program. The truck example I like to use because I find that one generally gets tied to family pretty quickly, and I'm trying to move away from that. So once we've decided kind of on what we're giving, who is getting what, then we need to do a bit of like retroactive and go back and talk about the exceptions to the rules that we are setting out. So, um, as an example, let's say senior gen dad is semi-retired. So at this point, his main role on the farm is operating equipment. He has a truck. Why? Are we giving every equipment operator a truck? No. So why did dad get a truck? Yeah, no problem. It's historical business contributions. That's why dad gets a truck, obviously. But we need to define that. We need to record it and we need to make it clearly part of our compensation plan so that when nephew comes into the business as an equipment operator, he knows that he's not getting a truck. He doesn't expect it. Like it's not, no, dad got a truck because of this. And this is your role. This role does not come with a truck.
Maybe at some point in the future it will, but not right now.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So we're tying those benefits to roles. We're like who's getting what, tying it to the role, not the individual, and really defining the exceptions to the rules.
Yes, that those exceptions is what we were just talking about with equipment operator, older
Mhm.
generation gets the truck, but that's the exception. And so having that all documented and planned out helps with if somebody says, well, why not me? Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
100%. And
Yeah.
especially if you've got multiple family members coming back, like that's when I find it gets the most complicated. I think that arm's length employees maybe don't they'll ask, but they don't necessarily expect.
Hmm.
Whereas, next gens coming into the business might expect the same things that the generations before them have had. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be as big as a truck. It could be gas from the
Hmm.
tank. It could be um, meals, field meals, if that's not something that all of these things. So,
Time
um,
off. Yeah.
time off is a great one. Yeah. So, really important to define who is getting what. And like I say, the exceptions as well. That also defining the exceptions removes the emotional piece from it. Because those can be hard conversations to have if nephew is coming to you and saying, well, grandpa got a truck or dad got a truck. Why don't I get one? It can be hard to, sit there and kind of have to explain the reasoning. But if you have come up with this philosophy as a leadership group or a management group, whatever it might be. Um, you're sort of like supported by the work that you've already done. You've already put the thought into it. It's not about emotions anymore. No, this is our compensation philosophy states that equipment operators don't get a vehicle. We made an exception for dad because of his historical contributions to the farm.
Mhm. And then I think if you can tie that into this is where we're trying to take the farm, and this is where
Mhm.
our financial performance, and as much or as little as you want to share on that front, right? But if you can show that there's been thought and intention put into it, I think you'll get more buy-in, right? I think just naturally, if instead of saying oh, that's just the way it is, right? If you can say,
Mm,
if somebody asks more questions, which I would encourage, that's just the way I'm wired. Okay, let me show you. And this is our plan, right? This is coming from that big picture, what we're trying to do on this farm, and it's years in the future, and it's been years in the making, and this is where you fit into it. I mean, I'm like, let's go. I'm bought in.
mhm. And I
That's the
think
way my head works. Yeah.
no, I love that. It's such a good point that you just brought up because for me, the compensation philosophy is one piece in a bigger HR framework that I think everybody should have built. And so, this compensation piece is coming alongside an org chart of today and an org chart of the future, where you're showing everybody these are roles that are going to be available, these are opportunities for growth within the business, and with some of these there is a truck involved, so that people are staying invested and really wanting to, like you said, help push the business forward to its vision that you defined at the beginning. See, it all comes full circle.
It does, it does. And if you can get that buy-in, right, then it helps with turnover, right? Maybe turnover is down a little bit, which saves on retraining costs and that buy-in I think can help with just performance on day-to-day tasks. This is how we set it up. This is why you are important and why we're compensating you for these kind of behavioral standards or performance standards. This is how we run our farm. And it's who we are. It's that values, right? It's that foundation.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so like for today in, talking about compensation, this is really like the philosophy piece. Our episode's going to be a little bit shorter and sweeter today, but I wanted this to be standalone. And so, I mean, I've kind of gone through the practical aspects, but the thing that cannot be understated is how challenging it can be to get through. I mean, we've done it in like a 30-minute podcast episode, but the reality of going through these conversations as a family, this is not easy stuff. Like trying to attach a dollar value to the contributions that people are making is can be challenging in itself. Never mind when it's your family members. Are you kidding? Not easy stuff. Um but it's important to do the work now to set up the future of your farm. I mean, do you want people to be making the same sacrifices, going through the same struggles in the future generations to come, or do you want things to maybe be a little bit easier for those that are coming into your business? So I don't want to make it sound simple because it isn't. It really is not. That's where, like of course it's the plug of if you need support, people are out there to support you in having these conversations. And there's a lot of other things that can come up during trying to handle compensation, like accountability for other roles and responsibilities. When we talk about equitable pay and things like that, why is uncle getting paid more than other uncle? What are their contributions look like? Well, they've both worked on the farm their entire lives. It gets really complicated. So, if you feel like you need the support, find someone who can help you through that. It's not worth breaking up the farm over, but we need to be pushing things forward. We need to progress our business, progress our management, and having a defined compensation system is one of those ways.
100% agree. And you are our HR expert, but I have worked with some farms in this area too. And having the conversation can be tricky, but it should and can make future conversations easier. So it's like one of those
Mhm.
things, right? So, if you put it off and put it off and put it off, you could have bigger issues to deal with. And yeah, so I'm just backing you up on that because I've seen
Yeah,
it too.
thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And again, not just the bigger issues, but like the way that we've always done things, is that the way we always want to do them? If compensation frustrates you on your farm, do you want the future generations to go through the same thing? Like, what's the definition of insanity?
But doing the same thing and expecting a different result.
Exactly. So, like, let's do it. Let's tackle it. You got this. I know that was all I wanted to say for today's episode, was really just the philosophy piece. What do we think about compensation? What do we want to reward? Decide on those things as a group. It's not just one person that's going through this exercise on their own. It's like shareholder level kind of stuff. So um
So
we need to
next
decide.
time we'll get into a little bit more detail around it. Is that
Yeah,
the
so,
plan?
like, next time I wanna talk about role development.
Okay.
Like, now that we've decided what we want to compensate, we need to define roles. We need to place it's a whole spreadsheet. That's a good one, but yeah, so
So
we need
we're
to grade different job factors. So next time we're gonna talk about job factors, we're gonna talk about salary bands, we're gonna talk about performance bonuses, things like that. Um More like dollar value kind of stuff, where today I
nice.
just really wanted people to reflect on their farm's philosophy, how they
Right.
feel about compensation, and how that ties back into their mission, their vision, their values.
So yeah, so we'll continue to kind of round out that 3 key alignments thing that we started the episode with. We've talked about the big picture, and then we're going to move it into the management and operations and move it
Mhm.
into the finance a little bit. So that's good. I'm looking forward
100%,
to it. Yep.
because we can wanna pay people a whole bunch of money, but you gotta like, what's the budget? It's that's always the
What's
other.
what's the budget, and then what are you doing, right? So those are
Yeah,
the two other bubbles.
100%. How are you feeling? Do you feel like compensation philosophy, you got it?
Yeah, it got me excited about it. I want to have
That's exciting.
those challenging conversations. I want to help. That's all.
I
Yeah.
think I think compensation is my favorite like sort of pocket of HR. I love building compensation systems. So I'm excited for next time.
Well, it's so rewarding, right? To take a farm that's doing it maybe a little bit ad hoc and then dealing with those frustrations and then having it all nicely set out. And it like not that you'll prevent all tricky conversations because you have a compensation philosophy, but when you see it help, it's very rewarding. Yeah.
Rewarding, no pun intended.
Good one.
Okay, so on that, I'm gonna wrap us up for today. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I hope that you took away really the way that this ties into the strategic elements on your farm. I hope you felt maybe inspired, even if you're not thinking about compensation right now. I hope it inspired you to pull out your values again and apply them to maybe some other decisions that you're trying to make on the farm for the season coming up. If they're not printed and on your wall, they really should be. But anyway, so thanks for tuning in today. Like we said, next time we're going to dive even deeper into compensation, a little bit more of the building blocks, those kind of different elements, the pieces that weave together. Um, but for now, yeah, listen, you guys, you know where to find us, social media, all that kind of great stuff.
Yeah. If you have any questions or if there's any particular situation on your farm that you might want us to address in part 2, please feel free to reach out.
And that's it. That's us for today.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of At the Fence Line with Sarah Chambers and Gavin Bedker. If you have any questions or comments about today's episode or would like to get in touch with us, please find us on Instagram at backswath_MGMT or through our website at www.backswath.com. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast belong solely to the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views, policies, or positions of Backswath or its affiliates. Any reference to specific products, services, organizations, or individuals does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by Backswath.